were, stealing things. We had guys in the stores Italian guys, of course, that we would talk to. And if they caught somebody, with a bad credit card, they would tell them, they got a card that the name of the card is Larry Chiarelli on it. And you look at the guy, and this is Tyrone Biggs. And you'd say, listen, buddy, this ain't, if you got more identification, because if your name doesn't match this here, I'm going to get you locked up. So the guy would run away, of course. And this guy would call upstairs, and they go, your shoes are here. And what we would do is we go down there and bang out the credit card. And everybody got new suits and shoes, and we throw the card away.
Welcome back to the Invest in Yourself podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Martinez, and today I'm joined by a former Mafia affiliate that became the New York City cop. His name is Louis Balistreri, and he is now a retired cop. Louis shares his upbringing with being around many Mafia guys and going on to doing crimes with them. Louis would go on to completely switching sides and working for law enforcement. That didn't stop him from being around wise guys, though. He went on to go undercover in a major Mafia takedown that was named Operation Wasteland. You will hear how he took down many Mafia guys from the different New York families. Please subscribe to my channel for more interviews like this, and without further ado, let's get into Louis's story. All right, everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I got a really good guest on today. His name is Lou. Lou was involved with law enforcement. And organized crime, of course. He worked a couple cases like that. And he grew up around a lot of wise guys, we'll say, and wise guys' kids. And his family was on both sides of the fence. Isn't that right, Lou?
That's correct.
Yeah, they were both somewhere with the mob, and a lot of them were cops and stuff, too. So you got an interesting background, and it really made you unique in your career with law enforcement, and you had a whole different perspective on how you handled situations and cases and stuff like that. So I appreciate you taking out some time and coming on the show.
Absolute pleasure being here.
Yeah, well, I no problem on my end, man. I'm glad you reached out and we were able to make this happen. So
let's thank Uncle Sal for that. Uncle Sal is the guy who hooked me up with you, and I say that in an endearing fashion.
Yeah, well, because with Sal, you said you had reached out to Sal from the other podcast that I was doing with him, and you were able to reconnect, and he knew a lot of your family members and wise guys.
That's correct. We come from the same neighborhood.
Yeah, that's interesting. We'll take us back to your childhood, and let's hear your background and how you worked your way, and you were kind of on the side of the fence of either joining the mob or being a law enforcement guy.
It could have happened. Okay, I grew up in South Brooklyn. Okay, I was born on 6th Avenue between 18th and 19th Street, which is the Park Slope section of Brooklyn. I went to Catholic school, St. John's. I was baptized in the Catholic church, of course, strict Catholic parents. I was a normal kid, did what I had to do, went to school. My dad's family were involved. My father's a retired cop, but they were involved. My father had a cousin who lived right next door to the house that I lived in, a three-story brownstone. Back in those times, families bought all the houses on the block, and everybody lived together. Okay, so your cousins were your brothers, and your aunts and uncles were second parents to you, and that's the way it was. My dad had a cousin who was a bookmaker. He lived next door to where I lived. And I was maybe 5 or 6 years old, and I used to call him Uncle Jimmy, and he was running numbers. And every day around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, he would call me, and he would say, hey, take this bag, bring it down the block to Uncle Mike. Everybody was my uncle. I didn't know who these people were. And I took the bag down the block, and who am I bringing it to? Uncle Mike. What am I doing? I'm running numbers for an organized crime guy without even knowing it. And they would give me $5. Now, this is back in 1964, 65. $5 is like $200 today. Right. So,
it was a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. And then I had a piggy bank that was actually a sailor, a white sailor with a sack on his back. And I had this full of money. My mom says to me, where'd you get all this money from? I said, I got it from Uncle Jimmy. What do you do for Uncle Jimmy? They give me the bag. I run it down the block to Uncle Mike. That was it. I caught an ass whipping. I never did that again. This guy, the guy in the neighborhood that we grew up around was a gentleman by the name of Tato Marino. Tato Marino's real name was, I believe, Gaetano. Now, I lived at 344 19th Street. Tato Marino lived at 286 19th Street. So he was right down the block. But he was a great, great old guy. He took care of people in the neighborhood. If you had a problem, like you saw in The Godfather, you went to old man Tato and he smoothed things out for you. You had a problem with your rent or whatever, he would take care of things. But then again, you may owe him a favor in return. If it was nothing major, it was nothing major. But he had a place on 5th Avenue and 20th Street called Dixie Tavern, where he conducted his court in the back. And on the side of the building, it said, where particular people dine. And everybody know who it was. He had another place further into South Brooklyn. He was a boss, and it's unclear to me if he was a Genovese guy or a Lucchese guy. I think he leaned more towards Genovese. Now, underneath him, he had a guy. His main guy was a guy by the name of Johnny D. His real name was Johnny Demma. Johnny Demma was a big numbers guy. He was the bookie. He was the main gazane. And my cousin worked for him. My dad, growing up, had a true Sicilian godfather who was his godfather. My grandmother's sister was married to this guy named Tom Pagnotta. Tom Pagnotta was a Zip. He was a wise guy from Sicily, and he did a lot of time in jail. My dad and my grandfather used to go visit him. And the day he was released from jail upstate, my dad and my father took him directly to a Cadillac dealership, and he got himself a brand new Caddy right then and there. It was all prearranged for him. That's the kind of juice that this guy had. So these were real wise guys back in the day when wise guys were wise guys.
Right.
Now, my father had a bunch of other cousins that were more involved in numbers and policy and sports betting. And, I knew these people, but I didn't know who they were. I was just all around them. Everybody was my uncle, Uncle Frankie, Uncle this, Uncle that. What do I know? I was just a kid.
Right.
Now, from there, I moved to East New York, Brooklyn. East New York, Brooklyn is the area where Sal Palizzi came from. And we bounced around on the same streets with some of the same guys. I went to Catholic school. And while I'm in Catholic school, I always wonder why certain guys, hey, Johnny, where's your father? How come he don't come to the school meetings? How come he don't come to basketball games? He's at work. This guy was one of the heaviest banana racketeers ever. He was involved in porn. Now, this guy John had cousins who were also involved in a banana crime family. Okay? Nobody knew it, but it was all around me all the time. Every place I turned was wise guys. Whose father was this? Whose uncle was that? So I go to a high school called Christ the King High School. And Christ the King High School was dominated by organized crime guys' kids. Now, I'm around hanging out with all of these organized crime kids all day long. I don't know who they are, but one of them today is a Banana Capo. I'm sure you've heard of Joey Gallo. Yep. Crazy Joe Gallo. Mm-hmm. His nephew, Joey Gallo, Crazy Joe Gallo's sister's son, was a very good friend of ours. We all hung out together. And as time went on, I got to learn who all these people were, and they were all heavy hitters. From there, my father and mother decided we got to get out of East New York because it was starting to turn, and they moved us out to Massapequa, Long Island. What is Massapequa, Long Island? It's a haven for organized crime guys. Carlo Gambino lives there. Roy DeMeo lives there. The entire Gambino family was there. the whole place was full of wise guys. Now, I go out there and I start working in a pizzeria that I didn't know at the time is owned by wise guys. There's a silent partner who's a wise guy. And what am I doing? I'm getting groomed now, hanging out with all these people with their nephews, with their sons, with their daughters. One of these people, two of the people that I got to know without knowing who they were Roy DeMeo. I didn't know Mr. DeMeo, but he came into the pizzeria because we all knew everybody. And his daughter was engaged to a friend of mine who was my boss's nephew. It was just crazy. It was just all around us. And his son, Albie, I didn't know him well, but after his father was killed, Roy DeMeo was killed, they found him in the trunk of a car. It is understood, now I don't know this for sure, but it is understood that two guys in Roy DeMeo's team. Now, Roy DeMeo owned the Gemini Lounge. Right. He was a tough guy, okay? I didn't know him to be that way. I didn't know him that well. I knew him by face, but I knew his daughter. I believe her name was Dion, and his son, Albie. And after he got killed, Albie had a very big problem. So after I retired as a cop, I was a detective in organized crime. I opened up an Italian ice store in Massapequa, Long Island. A mutual friend of ours brings Albie to me, and Albie and I used to sit and discuss police work and organized crime work. He used to think that the feds were following him all the time. I said, no, that's not the way it happens. He used to think that his phone was being tapped. That's not the way it happens. There's nobody listening to you. So I kind of put his mind at ease to all of this stuff, the way it was happening. And he said to me, I see a therapist, but you're more therapeutic for me than my therapist. He wrote a book called Sins of My Father. And in that book, he credited me for being his therapist. He said, I met this guy from the Organized Crime Strike Force, and I wasn't from the Strike Force. I was from the Organized Crime Investigation Division. And he said, I used to sit in this guy's store, and it was like it was full of organized crime. I had pictures of Frank Sinatra. I had The Sopranos. I had The Godfather. I liked it. I was playing Italian music all day long. It was beautiful. And that's the atmosphere I created. He says this was a shrine to organized crime. And I used to sit with this guy, and I was so comfortable with him. It was very therapeutic. Now, working, go ahead.
Who was your boss at that time, or like that you were at that pizzeria?
I'm going to leave that incognito for now. Okay. But he was a heavy hitter, and he had other family members who were even stronger than he was. But, being in that particular place, I was hanging out with the right guys who were the wrong guys, and we were doing things that we shouldn't have done. I was what I will call an opportunist criminal. We were, stealing things. We had guys in the stores that, Italian guys, of course, that we would talk to. And if they caught somebody, with a bad credit card, they would tell them, they got a card that the name of the card is Larry Chiarelli on it. And you look at the guy and this is Tyrone Biggs. And he'd say, listen, buddy, this ain't, if you got more identification, because if your name doesn't match this here, I'm going to get you locked up. So the guy would run away, of course. And this guy would call upstairs, and they go, your shoes are here. And what we would do is we go down there and bang out the credit card. And everybody got new suits and shoes, and we throw the card away. But, it was shaking and moving. We were doing things that we thought were right. And it's just the mentality of who we were. I was 21 years old. I drove a brand new Lincoln. Okay. I bought the Lincoln from a very heavy hitter in Brooklyn named Patrick Testa. Patrick Testa's brother was Joey Testa, and his partner was Anthony Center. They're just getting out of jail now, who worked for Roy DeMeo. Mm-hmm. So every place I turned, it was all around me. Now,
So I mean, you did know some of the Testas, or you at least him. Did you know his
I knew
brother?
Patty.
Or,
I knew Patty.
so
Patty's dead now.
you didn't know the Gemini twins then?
No, I didn't know Anthony Center or Joey Testa, but Patty was a gentleman. He was in Canarsie, Brooklyn. Great guy. He hooked me up with a gray Lincoln with red velour interior. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful. He got it for me from a dentist who passed away. I don't think there was anybody sitting in the back seat. And there I am, 21 years old, like hot shit that I was, driving a brandy new Lincoln.
And so this was kind of like your stint with doing some scams and crimes.
Yeah,
and stuff.
we weren't. I never got involved in drugs. Never robbed anybody per se. I wasn't a stick-up man. I wasn't getting involved in drugs. I had other friends that worked in the mall that I went to grammar school with, whose uncles were wise guys. And this guy becomes a manager of a store, and he says, "I'm gonna put these jackets on the front rounder rack." And I got this particular manager who's going to be on at night. And do you remember the members only jackets?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what does he do? He puts this guy on as the manager at night, and he drove a car, a brown Cordoba. Okay, it was brand new. It was an old man's car, but he thought it was a Rolls Royce, and he used to park it like 17 miles in the parking lot. He didn't want anybody to go near it. So we had the night manager of the mall, who was a friend of ours. We'd say, "Listen, go announce this here, license plate number 345. Your lights are on or something." And sure enough, he does it. And here's this guy running. He's going down through the mall. And what do? We run across the street and steal everything off the rounder. So now we all got brandy new members only jackets. And, 2 days later, there we are in the club. Everybody's got brand new. My father's got one. Your father would have. Everybody's got them. And that's what we did.
Yeah. Well, so this was kind of like you just being on the fence about.
This is what we were doing. I was selling swag out of the trunk of my car. I had men's coats that were $125. I was selling for $40 each. Guys would come to see me, and I was selling out of the back of the trunk of my car. We had all kinds of stuff happening.
And what about, like, you had mentioned before too, like you had a sort of quote unquote kick up money or merchandise.
I wasn't kicking up money, but we'd make sure that people around us, the guys who run a pizzeria, make sure that they got jackets and their fathers got jackets, and we took care of everybody. Okay. Yeah. Everybody had their own thing. Everybody was, I had the outside thing with the coats that belonged to me. Okay. That had nothing to do with anybody else. That was all my money, because those were coats that were coming out of Brooklyn that I made the connection for. But anything that happened within the pizzeria place or the mall that we're working in, we would, share that around. Everybody got a little piece of that action. We had a great time. It was, there's other things that we did that were way over the top, but nothing was, no violence, wouldn't beat people up. That wasn't my forte. The first, this is when I was a kid. I was maybe 13 years old, 12 years old, from the same area as Sal Palizzi. He knows the area very well. We're sitting in the backyard, and a truck. Sal says he'd love to do truck heists. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I did a truck heist when I was 12 years old. He goes, what are you talking about? What are you out of your mind? We're sitting in the backyard. A truck comes flying down the block with two black guys in it. They hit a curb. The door's open. They're running. Cops' cars are coming behind them. The cops get out of the car. They run. Now, the rear door on the truck is swinging open. So, I'm a nosy kid. I went over there. What's in the truck? Ladies' pantsuits, which were very popular in like 1969, 1970, all polyester. I mean, you wouldn't clean your car with them today. So, of course, We opened up the doors. That whole truck went into my father's garage. So they were a little hot. We let them cool down a week or two. And the next thing you know, I was selling pantsuits out of the garage, $10 a piece. All the ladies in the neighborhood had pantsuits in all different colors. Another time, my dad comes home and he says, gee, a truck just tipped over with all sod on it on such and such a street. He said, you kidding me? I said, yes. I go get the guy across the street. He had a dump truck. He was an Italian guy from Sicily. He did construction work. We got in this truck. We went over there, filled up the truck with sod. Everybody on the block had new lawns that summer. And we didn't think we were doing anything wrong. It was just an opportunity that came about. So getting back to where I was, I decided when I was 23 years old that I was getting married. Now, all growing up, I heard my father and his brother, both cops, and we had friends. So all we did was associate with cops, either cops or wise guys. And I was very excited about some of the stories my father told. So I was like, wow, I want to do that. That's kind of cool. And I didn't know what I wanted to be. So I took a lot of the police tests. And I went to work for an insurance company. And the insurance companies are more corrupt than wise guys. They're thieves in themselves. I saw guys stealing money out of people's policies and whatever, and this and that. We had, we had guys on the payroll. If you had high blood pressure, we'd send you a guy. It was 300 over 417. They go, oh, let's send this other guy in. You paid him off. Oh, yours is now 120 over 80. He used the other arm, and he got paid off. So it was all organized crime, but just nobody ever thought of it that way. No. One day I get a call, and this guy says to me, I'm police officer so-and-so. If you're interested in taking the job, report to Brooklyn College on Thursday. And at the time I had been working for a life insurance company down on Wall Street. And I always felt like the next day was going to be my last. So I says, all right. I went down and I took the job and never turned back. Now, as a cop, I love being a cop. I worked on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, which at the time back in the 80s was the heroin capital of America. Now, the police precinct that I got stuck in out of the police academy was the 7th precinct. That was on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Now, each borough was broken up into different precincts. Now, I was in Manhattan South, which was 59th Street down river to river. That's the borough I was in, and that consisted of the 1st, 5th, 7th, 9th, 10th, 17th, Midtown South and Midtown North precincts. Okay, but I was assigned to the 7th precinct. The 7th precinct was known as a dumping ground. Now, what that means is anybody who's a complete screw up, they send to the 7th precinct. What's my luck of the draw? I start there. So I had no place to go but up. But that's where I learned. I learned how to be a cop. I also had a very big influence from my dad. My dad set the tone for me. He was a very good cop. My dad actually worked with Frank Serpico, and I have stories about that he told me. And that we'll leave that for another day. But I couldn't wait to go to work. At first, I was like, "Oh my God!" I couldn't believe that people were living this way. One of the first jobs that I handled, I backed up a couple of cops in a radio car. There's 2 people in an apartment naked. They got knives. They're trying to cut each other. It was a husband and wife. I was like, "Oh, I never saw my mother and father naked." Okay. And then the guy said to me, one of the cops says, "Don't lean up against the wall. You'll be taking those roaches home with you." There was rats running along the floor. It was disgusting. I couldn't believe that people live that way. And I said to myself, I don't know, man, if I could do this for 20 years, because I was still a new jack. And after a while, it started to grow on me, and I started to like it, and I started to like it more and more. And your police brothers become your family. Okay, your partner is like everything to you. And what my dad told me was, you never give up your sergeant. You take care of the sergeant. You never open up your mouth. You keep your mouth shut. And never say anything or do anything to anybody that you don't want the captain in internal affairs to know about. And I live by that rule. And I was a rock'em sock'em cop. You couldn't buy me. Okay, I didn't. I never stole anybody's money. I never stole drugs. If I arrested you and you had $10,000 in your pocket, that $10,000 got vouchered. I did not steal your money, which was easy for me to do. I just didn't do it. That wasn't my way. If I arrested you and you were my prisoner, and I kicked the shit out of a lot of people, nobody else hit you except me. And you were going to determine the beating that you wanted to get. And when I said you're under arrest, I didn't take those words back. I'm putting handcuffs on you like a gentleman, or you're going to be on the floor, and I'm taking you to the hospital because I'm going to open your head for you. That's the way I rolled. And I had a reputation of a no-nonsense cop, but a very fair cop. One of the biggest compliments I got as a cop, I was bringing a prisoner into the precinct, and there were other cops taking prisoners out. Two guys crossed each other's path, and one guy says, "Hey, what'd you get arrested for?" I said, "I got arrested for possession. This is my prisoner. He got arrested. I caught him with drugs." And he goes, "Well, who locked you up?" He says, "This guy over here." He said, "Oh, that's Louis B. He'll take care of you. He's a good guy." So even the prisoners liked me because I treated them very fairly. I used to tell them, "Don't break my balls. Because if you break my balls, the sergeant on the desk is going to break my balls. Okay? Help me. Let's do the arrest paperwork. Let me fingerprint you. I'll get you a soda, a sandwich, because I got to get you out of here. Otherwise, I get in trouble." And these guys were good with me. They, if you were a bad guy, I had to take care of business. But most people weren't fighters. You caught them. You break their balls. I give you a phone call. You call your parents, call somebody. I was fair that way. But if you were a bad guy, if you hurt a kid, I treat you like shit. If you got involved in drugs, I treat you like shit. I locked up guys who hit their wife or whatever. It's something that I could do. I never took a DWI arrest. I wouldn't do it because when I was younger, I did stupid things like that. And I wasn't going to be a hypocrite. If you ran somebody over or killed somebody or did severe amount of, damage to somebody's car or whatever, I have to lock you up. But, I was very fair about it.
So you took your ways. Well, I mean, first off, like you being able to even become a cop at all with your past and stuff, it is pretty amazing. Like, I mean, I understand too. Like people do shit when they're younger, right? And then they grow out of it, and you became a cop and went legit and didn't, like you said, do any corruption or anything like that. You just
that wasn't me. That wasn't my forte.
Completely changed.
I just wasn't going to do that.
Right.
I wanted to get into a shootout. I heard guys go, "Oh man, I wish that happened to me." As crazy as it sounds, I was never afraid. I actually loved the sense of danger, which is actually stupid. I was walking back to my post. I was on the job 13 months, walking back to my command. And this lady says, "There's a fight on the corner. Somebody's got a gun." So I'm 2 blocks from the precinct. I'm walking by and I hear a shot go off. So I immediately took cover behind a van. Now I'm trying to see up the block through the driver's side, through the front windshield to see what's going on. And I'm standing there and I'm looking and I got cover. And a guy comes out from behind the van. He lifts up his shirt. He pulled out a .357 and fired 3 rounds at me.
Damn.
And all the training in the world, I could not stop blinking. That's all I remembered is I was just blinking. I wasn't afraid. It just happened so fast. I wound up pulling my weapon. And at the time, I was carrying a 6-shot .38. I swung the gun And what this guy did was he stepped in front of a lady who was hovering over her 2 kids because she saw it happen. And I did not return fire because I was afraid of hitting the lady or her 2 kids. And I can tell you right now, if I killed a kid, I would kill myself because that's what was going to happen to me. I couldn't deal with that. I am proud to say that I had 6 legitimate good opportunities to take a human life in the line of duty, and I didn't do it. Okay? Because I remembered what my father told me. My father says, the guy that you're locking up, the guy that you're coming in contact with, you have to remember that, see, you are somebody's husband. You are somebody's sister, brother. You have a sister. You're somebody's son. And I treated people like that until, I always used to say, listen, sometimes my mama got to get smacked too. But I gave you every opportunity. I didn't want to kill anybody. I wasn't afraid of doing it. I was afraid of the ramifications that would happen to me later on, because what they don't know is, you don't see this on TV, I have to go sit in front of a grand jury, and they're going to determine if the amount of force I used was necessary. And I came close, very close. The closest I ever had was shooting a 16-year-old kid who pointed a .45 at me. And I thought he was about 12 years old. And 2 kids were picking on him, and he went home and got his uncle's .45, and he was going to shoot them. And I happened to stumble upon it. And I took cover behind a car, and I told him, drop the gun. I was putting pressure on the trigger. I was going to shoot him right in the face to take him out completely. And he put it down. And he got a beating. We took the gun away from him. He got a beating, and he got locked up. But the judge on that case made the family thank us when we went to trial. He says, if I was these cops, I would have killed your kid. Thank them for not killing him because they had every right to do so. I was proud of that. I had some hairy situations.
Another big part of your cases and stuff that you were involved with is, I think the audience would really like to hear it too, is the one where you went and, the whole mob bust with the Genovese and Gambinos. I think that one would be a really good story to get into and how it came about.
I became a detective in 6 years, which is pretty quick. I locked up the world. I had nothing to do with community affairs and this kind of stuff. I don't want to be a sergeant. I wanted to be a detective. Okay. And that was my goal. So I worked in narcotics. I got my detective shield. And then from there, I went from Manhattan South narcotics. I went to Queens narcotics. And then from there, I got drafted I did a lot of work with Asian organized crime. So I was drafted into a unit called HIDTA, high intensity drug trafficking. And the first President Bush opened up this unit and he said, give me 30 of your best detectives. And I was drafted in because I knew a lot about Asian organized crime. Then I had already got my detective shield, and the lieutenant said to me, would you like to be an undercover? What's in it for me? Well, I'll get you promoted again. So I says, I'm going to do it. So what I did was I worked in a full undercover capacity in that I was taken out of the police computers. I had a completely different name. I had a driver's license, a gun permit, a social security card, a voter's card. I had credit cards. I was an actual different person. My car license plate came back to somebody that was unidentifiable. And if you ran my license plate, it would immediately go to Albany, which was the Department of Motor Vehicles, and then they would kick it back to the police department. They'd reach out to me and say, somebody's looking at you, so you got to be careful. So I became this other person, and I bought Asian heroin for 2 solid years. Now, the role I played was I was a wise guy's nephew. And the wise guy the name I took was Basile. Now, there was a guy on Long Island named Phil Basile who ran all of the nightclubs on Long Island. So, and he had a bunch of nephews. So I used to say that I was Louis Basile So if anybody, oh yeah, that's Philly's nephew, and it flew. And I put on such a performance when I locked up some of these guys. We locked up 2 guys in the Bronx. They were crying after they got locked up. I got locked up with them, and they split us up. The 2 guys were crying. They were afraid that my uncle was going to kill them. My uncle never existed. I just put on an Academy Award winning performance. While I'm in this unit, I have a problem with this lieutenant who brought me in as his undercover. He was an Asian lieutenant. We bumped heads. So one of us has to get launched. I get launched. So what does the Organized Crime Investigation Division do to me? They stick me back in a team doing Italians. I don't want to do Italians because I'm going to run into somebody that I know. And I don't want to be in that position because they're gonna find me out. It could put my family at risk. I don't know, what's going on. So they put me in a team where organized crime was telling bakeries who they could sell their bread to. All right. So I went out and I was trying to talk to the mom and pop stores, saying, listen, we're a new kid on the block here, me and my brother-in-law, and what do you pay for Italian bread? 25 cents? I'll do it for 15 cents. And they would say, no, we can only buy from, what do you mean you can only buy? This is America. No, the association. What are you talking about, association? Now, what organized crime did was they opened up these legitimate associations that were criminal enterprises for organized crime. They were getting kickbacks from these bakeries and this and that, and they were telling the bakeries who they were allowed to sell their product to. I'm in the middle of that case, and I'm starting to do well. What happens when I do well? They're going to have to promote me. So what do? They punt me into another team. All right? Now, I got a very bad reputation that I'm a boss fighter. And I'm not a boss fighter. I'm just a man. And the way I felt was, first I'm a man, then I'm a cop. And I didn't care if you had stars, bars, stripes, eagles. It didn't matter. You're going to talk to me like a gentleman, and I'll talk to you like a gentleman. So I get this bad reputation because they can't control me. So they stick me in a team in the Organized Crime Investigation Division doing private sanitation. Now, private sanitation was controlled for more than 50 years by organized crime. The 2 families I got involved in was the Genovese and the Gambino crime family. Okay? Now, they stick me in this team, and nobody wants to talk to me. Nobody talked to me for about 3 months.
That's a long time to go without talking.
I had a ride with a guy. I rode with a guy who wound up he's my brother today. We wound up becoming partners. And, at one point in time, nobody wanted to be in this team. They called us the Bad News Bears. And we'll leave this for another day. Well, I'll bring my partner in to speak about what went on in this team. It's absolutely insane. You talk about laughing. Some of the craziest things went on in this team. But we wound up doing this case, and we hit a point where my sergeant sat us all down and said, listen, you want to continue to be the Bad News Bears, or let's put our stuff together. We were talented detectives, just nobody wanted to be there. We got stuck there, and you couldn't get out of the team. I couldn't get out of the team. I couldn't go anyplace. So, I didn't want to be there, but we had to make the best of it. So we decided to get together as a team. We made a pact, and we wound up blowing this case out of the water. And altogether, the case was in existence from 1992, I believe, to 97. Altogether, we did more than 30 search warrants, and we locked up altogether 32 organized crime people. The name of the case was Operation Wasteland, and you could reach out on YouTube and see our trailer for that. We did a whole bunch of phenomenal work, and at the end of the case, we took in $271 million in asset forfeiture. Rudy Giuliani, went to Washington, D.C. based on this case, and he got another $54 million. Now, my whole team, 11 guys, were promised to be promoted. And that never happened.
How come?
Just a lot of, some of us, I was told it was Rudy Giuliani who, at the time, the police commissioner was Bill Bratton, who was a great guy. And when Bill Bratton left, Bill Bratton told us we're all getting promoted. We were high-fiving and what have you. Bill Bratton left in September, I think, of 1995. And Rudy Giuliani, the spiteful guy that he is, I think he's a narcissist, killed all of the contracts. We call them contracts, which was all the promotions that he was going to do. We were in there. Now, it fell back on the ears of the commanding officer of the Organized Crime Investigation Division and another lieutenant, some of the bosses, and they never fought for us, and we got nothing out of it. Now, today, out of the 11 people in the team, 6 are dead. Okay? I retired. I got injured on that case, which is another story in itself. I had to get 3 surgeries. I lost 30% use of my left arm. They tortured me because they didn't like me. They ruined me. The NYPD ruined me. And I left a very, very disgruntled human being for years on end. And what I decided now is when all of these wise guys now are coming out with their story, you know what? I'm coming out with my story. I'm telling the opposite side. You know, I'm no hero. I had a job. I did what I had to do. And I did it 100%. And I got no credit for it. And when I got injured, they didn't take care of me. The NYPD eats their own. But this case was unbelievable. And if you listen to the podcast, not the podcast, the video that we made called Operation Wasteland Deep Cover, you will see we actually have an hour and a half documentary that we're trying to sell now to one of the big Netflix, or somebody wants somebody to pick it up. But that tells the whole story. And me and my partner, we became very, very good friends, and we're brothers now. His kids call me Uncle Lou. My daughter calls him Uncle Vic, and, you know, he's a beautiful guy. And that's basically my story. You know, we could go into this stories upon stories upon stories to tell about Operation Wasteland. And if it's okay with you, we could leave that for another day. I'll bring other people in to explain this. What I have a friend of mine named Stephen Calapai, who I had spoken to more than 20 years ago about doing a movie on this. He's a movie producer. And he stayed with me for 20 years because he believed in me and he believed in our story. And we tried to get it when The Sopranos came out, and they wouldn't pick up the story.
How come?
Because The Sopranos had the arm on the market,
Yeah.
and we couldn't top that. David Chase was the main gazane. He was the man. He was very smart. So we waited, and now the timing is right with all of these other guys coming out of, you know, Michael Franzese, Larry Mazza, Anthony Ruggiano. Believe it or not, I know a lot of the same people that they do. You know, from the background that I am. I'm don't get me wrong, I'm not an organized crime guy, but I'll entitle myself as being an affiliate to this. I wasn't an associate or anything, but I was an affiliate. I knew a lot of things. I kept my mouth shut and did what I had to do. But, I mean, I love being a cop. I hated being a New York City cop at the time. You know, I enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed coming to work. I worked with some of the best guys ever. We had a lot of fun. You know, if we get into the Operation Wasteland video at some point in time, my partner and I will tell you stories on how we got together and how he wouldn't talk to me for weeks. I had to look out the window. He wouldn't talk to me. Because my background followed me. Now, he is a big, tall, handsome Italian guy that I nicknamed Pretty. Mm-hmm. Now, working in the narcotics division where I came from, at the time, I had a full head of hair. And working in narcotics, I had a ponytail like Steven Seagal. And, I was a martial arts guy, and guys called me Steven, and it was just complete nonsense. I was a rough and tumble guy. Now, working in narcotics, you carried what was known as a battle bag. In that battle bag, you had bazookas, hand grenades, crowbars, axe, anything you could come upon. You needed a tool in there that would help you out. Okay, so the first time I'm doing a surveillance with this guy, I took my battle bag. It sits in the back seat because you don't know what you're going to run into. You need pliers, screwdrivers. Sometimes you got to break a lock or whatever. Now, he worked in Vice, which was known as Public Morals Division. Okay. He was also a previous dealer in Vegas. So this guy's a big, tall, pretty handsome guy. All right. Now, he's carrying a bag too, but it's nothing like mine. So we're sitting looking at a Wise Guy location. We're doing a surveillance on it in Brooklyn. And he says, "You want a drink?" I said, "Yeah, do me a favor. Go over there and get me a Sprite." He comes back, gives me a Sprite. He's got a Diet Coke. I said, what kind of grown man drinks Diet Coke? So he reaches in the back. He takes out, I got a battle bag. He's got an attaché case. He opens up the attaché case. There's nothing in it, but all the holders for your pens or whatever. He's got a toothbrush, dental floss, a brush, a nail clipper, a nail file. I looked at it. I was like, "Where did you work?" He said, "Public Morals." I said, "What'd you do?" He said, "I locked up hookers." "You locked up hookers?" He says, "Yeah, I laid in bed in my panties and in your panties." He says, "Yeah, we send the girl in and she made the offer. I gave the other guys a signal, and they came in and locked them up. And then I got back in bed and did it all over again." I was like, "Holy shit." I said, "Do you carry a gun?" He goes, "Oh, yeah, I got one today." Sometimes he didn't carry a gun.
Damn.
He goes to me, "This is crazy. Now I got to work with this guy." I said, "I'm going to worry about this guy. I'll get killed. He ain't got a gun." He says to me, you want a drink?" I says, "I got the Sprite." He reaches into his bag, and I don't know if when you go on planes, they got the small bottles of liquor.
Right,
He
travel
got
size.
rum. He poured himself a cocktail. I was like, holy cow. And this was the beginning of how we developed this relationship, and we've been best friends ever since.
Well, maybe we'll have him come on sometime.
Yes. In a week or two or whatever. If you saw us interact, you would laugh. The stuff that we had to do, we were sitting in a location to monitor a Wise Guy restaurant, and they had a meeting there every Thursday night. So we had to sit there, and we couldn't set up on it because they had a parking lot attendant who watched everything. He knew everything. And if he saw something that he didn't, he ran right in. He was telling somebody. So we had to go on the opposite side of the West Side Drive, and we were in a parking lot with the ass end of our car facing the Hudson River. So we're sitting there in the car, got surveillance equipment, binoculars, long lenses, and with document. This guy came in 8 o'clock, and this car is coming by. Car goes by, it goes back. The guys are flashing their lights on. So what the hell's going on here? They're blowing a horn at us. What's happening here? We are in a gay man's meeting place. Okay. Now, order not to be bothered, we had to sit in the car. Oh, Vic, hurry up. This guy's coming. You had to hug me. We made believe we're kissing. Okay. Just so these guys would drive by us. This is 2 grown men. Okay. And I would break his balls and go, "All right, Vic, this car's coming. Go down on me." He said, "Go there with his house. Shut up. Put your head down there. Don't worry about it. Go, what do you want? Shut up. Just put your head down there." And he would get mad. But of course, I was doing it to break his balls.
Yeah.
Now, it's better. In the summertime, we're doing this all through the winter, all through the springtime. In the summertime, there is me and my partner out there with our little shorts on, our sneakers. I got blue glasses on, flowered shirts. We bring out the barbecue. We're roasting hot dogs and drinking cocktails. Well, we're doing surveillance.
No.
And we just look like, and I have nothing against homosexuals, we look like 2 homos just to blend in. Hi, everybody's waving at us. This is part of the case. This is the stuff that Operation Wasteland was all about. that we cannot put in the reports. How we got this information is you had to be creative and whatever. And that's Operation Wasteland.
Yeah, and I think this is a good wrapping up point. Like we can, like you said, just if your partner's down, we can see if we can set something
well,
up
he'll love it. He'll love it.
And do that.
He's pretty.
He's pretty.
He's pretty.
Well, to wrap up now, and what we can do is do a little bonus clip. So, I'll of course, I don't know. I guess you got a book coming out. You can tell people about real quick.
I'm writing a book called A Revenge Served Cold, which is fiction based on some true facts. I started off in Sicily. I actually started off in the town where my grandmother grew up, called Castellamare di Golfo, which was in Sicily, which was the birthplace of organized crime. And I tell the whole story. And it's about a family that comes from Sicily. They come here to run organized crime in Brooklyn. And some of the locations are similar to the locations that I'm telling you about, because that's the locations that I know of. And I keep it going all the way through, where one guy in the family becomes a cop and he works for his uncle. So it's kind of similar to what I did, but it's not 100% true. And I think it's going to be real good.
Yeah, well,
I'm hoping. I got my fingers crossed.
Well, it does sound like you got some good things in the works, man. And really, like you got a book, maybe potential documentary, and
documentary. Hopefully, we'll get the documentary put into the Mob Museum.
That'd be cool.
I'm going to meet Sal within the next month or so. In June, I'm meeting him. I can tell you right now, we're going to have bail money because we're going to have a good time. Because he's a lunatic and so am I. He's just a funny guy. I really like him a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think you guys will have a lot of fun there, man.
Oh, he's out of his mind. He laughs when he talks to me.
Well, yeah, you're pretty funny guy.
I like laughter. I like I like
busting balls.
Yeah, I break everybody's balls. I have to tell you, one of the things that I learned about being around organized crime guys, and of course my father, was respect. And that's a big word that has been lost. The New York City Police Department never respected anybody. They had power because they could take a test. But if I took them outside, I'd beat the shit out of them. And the only reason why they could shit on you is because they had stripes on their arms or whatever. But they weren't real men. They squat to pee. They just had this rank. Where organized crime, you had to prove yourself. You weren't, you weren't just, you didn't take a test to become a capo. You know what I mean? It's an earned rank. And that's why becoming a detective is an earned rank. And I never wanted to be anything but. Well, I had a great career. I enjoyed it. I'm in the police department's honor legion. In 13 and a half years, I got more than 20 something medals. And I was only scared twice. Yeah.
Well, I think what we'll do now is we'll go over and do the bonus clip. And then, of course, we'll try and have you back if you and your partner, we can schedule something. But
Absolutely.
I do appreciate it, Lou.
Within the next couple of weeks. That'd be great.
Yeah. All right. Well,
okay, my brother, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing me to tell my story. I think a lot of people are going to like it. And I tell the truth and nothing but the truth as based on my experiences.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Lewis has got a very shocking story. He went from doing crimes with wise guys to locking them up. Lou was very lucky he chose the right side. He could have spent a number of years in prison or been dead by now. It is truly very interesting how things turn out. Please comment any key takeaways that you got from this interview with Lou. Please share it with anyone that you think will enjoy this type of content. And if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to give it a like and a subscribe. If you want to get notified when new interviews will be coming out, hit the notification bell. I also did do a little bonus clip with Lou. If you want to access that and watch it, please go to the video description and become an Invest in Yourself podcast member. It costs $5 a month. You get exclusive bonus clips and you get access to podcast episodes early. Thank you again so much for watching, and of course, we'll see everyone on the next one.